Great. Of course. As soon as I go live, it stops working. Oh, I hate this so much. Alright. How do we fix this? We're gonna find out together. Come on, camera. I would love if for once things would just work. Nope. I love when things break while I'm trying to do things. Well, uh, the webcam might not be working today, but you know what is working? The game. So, we'll just have that going today. That's fine. Anyway, welcome to the game. We're back to playing Our Life. I fucked up last night. Uh, and didn't have the game up at all, just my face cam. Now today apparently the face cam isn't working. So we're gonna kind of speed run this and try and get through everything. So I will not be reading every option. I will not be telling you why. Nope. I will not be telling you why I picked the things that I did. Because uh I just need to get through this pretty quickly so we can move on. But I wanted to make sure you guys could see the game. This is like my fifth time playing this. It reminded you of when you first met Mr. Holden. Although he's probably not paying Cove to be friends with himself. Cove's dad seemed to feel your gaze somehow, or maybe you made a noise because a second later his eyes were on you. He waved you over with a smile. He looked happy to see you, but you still felt a little weird for getting caught. You've got to learn how to be more sneaky. You brushed your hands together to free them of sand, then jogged over to join the two. Good to see you again. What excitement are you up to today, Ari? Stuff. I found a really cool snail across the road. He was slimy, with funny eyes, and a nice shell. Mr. Holden grinned at you and at your enthusiasm. After you finished answering the question, Mr. Holden, attention returned to Cove, who was preoccupied with folding the bills out into a tiny rectangle. Sounds fun. You know, Cove was about to hit the store by the beach. The stores by the beach. Why don't you go with him? You shrugged. Cove was in the process of making similar motion. You didn't have anything else to do, and you had been to the stores in a few days. Maybe there was something new to look at. Maybe. Is that okay? I was gonna go by myself, but I guess you don't have to. Great, I'm sure you guys will have loads of fun. Mr. Holden reached into his pocket and pulled out a leather wallet filled with money. You found it odd since your moms only ever seemed to have cards in theirs. Here, 1 sec, water. He leaned in to pass a crisp 10 to Cove, giving him a wink and a whisper. Get something for your friend, too. Sure. That's my boy. Cove's dad ruffled his son's hair as he was straightening back up the bill in his hand, still held out towards the green-haired boy. Take care. Cove accepted the bill after a second and slipped it into his pocket. Then with one last nod, his dad turned and started walking. You followed after him, intrigued at the possibility this outing might bring. Cove strayed towards the gentle tide creeping up the sand. You fell in place beside him. It was a nice day, the sun was shining, and there weren't many clouds in the sky, though the wind coming off the ocean kept from being too hot. You took a deep breath, enjoying the scent of salt and ocean air. When you looked at Cove, he was dragging his feet through the sand a little, and you slid down to wait for him. His eyes searched the ground intently. Are you looking for snails? Shells? We picked shells last time. Let's go. Cove startled a little at the sound of your voice and mumbled, sort of. If you see any, can you let me know? You could manage that. You dropped your view to the sand, walking carefully so you didn't step on any. You were good at finding shells. You had a lot of them at home and always found new ones whenever you visited the beach. The comforting sound of the waves filled the silence with pleasant white noise, and you played a little game with yourself as you walked along, getting close to the water as possible without getting wet. It resulted in you having to run up the sand quickly when waves rushed in more than a few times, and although Cove threw a few glances your way, he didn't say a word. You didn't either. What are you going to shop for? What do you usually do on the beach? I think that's what we picked last time. The problem is, options in the game change depending on what you pick. I'm trying to pick what we picked yesterday because I want us to have the same result. And I have to try and remember everything we did yesterday so we can get back to where we were. A lot of things. I like bodyboarding, volleyball, and surfing, and everything and stuff. The idea of standing on a big board while the waves propelled you towards the shore was mystifying. I'm not allowed to surf. It looks hard. It's not once you get the hang of it. I could show you sometime. But I'm also not supposed to surf right now because I have this. He lifted up one arm, showing off the glaring pink cats wrapped around his wrist. Yeah. I also like collecting stuff that's on the shore, shells and sand dollars. I found a shark tooth once. You did? Cove stretched out his forefinger and thumb. It was this long. That was somehow both scary and delightful. No way. I mean it. I still have it under my bed. You'd have to remember to ask him to show it to you sometime. What about you? What do you do out here? I said we like to build sand castles. Last summer, Lizzie and I built one that was as tall as me, and sometimes they have sand building competitions. Sand building competitions down by the boardwalk. Cool. I bet you could win. You smiled at Cove. Maybe the two of you would build one together one day. Once you reached the shopping area, the noise level grew exponentially. No longer just waves and footsteps, but the chatter of people enjoying the lovely summer day, the call of birds trying to find bits of food left behind, and lots of salespeople trying to get attention. You sniffed the air and you walked beside Cove. You could still smell the ocean, but there was some scent now too. Pizza, pretzels, hot dogs. Sorry. We picked It's Nice. The energy surrounding the area seemed to fill you. There was a bounce in your step as you began to look at the familiar sights. There were so many things to do, you didn't know where to begin. You looked at Cove, hoping he was as excited as you were. Cove was glancing from one side of the street to the other with a look in his aquamarine eyes that you couldn't quite work out. What's that? Cove pointed at a large crowd of people gathered near a few tables with the large colorful umbrellas blooming from the middle. You couldn't see past the adults who were blocking the way, but you knew there must be something worth seeing. Without another word, the two of you hurried over to see what all the commotion was about. Feast your eyes on the amazing Alexander. In the center of the crowd was a man with a tall hat and funny green coat that had 3 long tails. There was a little table next to him with a cloth hanging over that read The Amazing Alexander in glittery gold script. Why tell people his name if he already had it on a sign? Cove hummed with understanding, then turned to walk away, just as the Amazing Alexander began to shuffle a deck of cards. I want to see the show. Cove glanced back to the man, then briefly lifted his arms up off his sides before returning them to place. Okay. He may not be impressed, but at least he didn't ditch you. You grinned, waving for him to follow as you raced back to stand in the crowd. With that, it began. The magic man pulled one card out of the deck, showing it to the curious onlookers. It was the 4 of diamonds. Watch closely. You did, squeezing through a few of the adult onlookers to get a better view. Suddenly, the man snapped his fingers, and the card just disappeared. Whoa! The Amazing Alexander, who had earned his title, turned his head and looked directly at you. He reached out with a kind smile. What is behind your ear? We backed away because we decided we did not like strangers. It was enough to deter him, and the crowd of people gathered behind you made it impossible to move any further. He smelled like popcorn and candy when he stepped closer, and you swallowed anxiously. You felt a tug, and then he pulled the four of diamonds out from behind his ear. What? You knew it couldn't really have come from your ear, but you still didn't get how he'd done it. There was light applause from the crowd, and the man gave a deep bow. This is for you. The man plucked a pair of balloons from a clump of them tied down on his table. Both were in the shape of dolphins instead of being normal circles. And one for your friend, too. Thank you for being my assistant. Wow! Now you were really grateful he chose you. After that, he went to someone else in the crowd. Pick a card, any card. My uncle does that every time he visits. Not the balloons, the stuff with the cards. Cove spoke plainly while reaching over to take the dolphin that had been designated for him. Maybe it wasn't so special. Cove's whole family was magic. I think that's what we did. If so, he was lucky. The crowd started to clear some, and you noticed to the side that there was a whole rack of brightly colored kaleidoscopes on display. We did the kaleidoscopes. Oh, Cove, check this out. You shifted your balloon string in your other hand so you could bring the mysterious tunnel to your eyes. A whole palette of colors appeared right in front of you, spinning into all kinds of different shapes as you twisted the end of the tube. Cove picked one up and looked through the twisting tunnel tube. After a second, he set it back on the rack, moving to the other side of the stall. He went under the awning, careful of his own floating dolphin, and you joined him. We asked him if he was having fun. Cove didn't answer straight away, and after a few more moments, you thought he wasn't going to say anything at all. A little. When Cove moved towards some stalls nearby, you followed beside him. We picked the crab, because it reminded us of Mr. Krabs. I remember that. While Cove looked at the sand pails, you were drawn to a table with colorful keychains laid out. They were sewn into the shapes of sea creatures, and there was a plaque that read "Handmade," standing proudly in front. There were lots of different types. You saw a dolphin, a shark, a crab, and a turtle. We grabbed the crab. Your hand stopped on the crab, claws raised, tiny smile on its face. It had big eyes and little legs, and fabric was smooth when you picked it up. You had seen a few crabs at the beach before, though they usually scuttled away before you got the chance to look at them closely. You liked the idea of having a crab all your own, even if it was a soft animal. You were instantly enamored. Checking the price, though, your heart fell. $6. You didn't know much about money, but you thought that was a lot to spend on one thing. You rarely had more than a $5 bill to your name. Is that what you want? Huh? Oh. It's $6, and I didn't bring any money. Right. It's fine. Are you sure? Yeah, we picked Are You Sure? Cove took the keychain from your hands, and that was that. He was holding a small yellow bucket for himself, too. My dad told me to. You beamed, excited at the idea of displaying a keychain somewhere in your room. It was nice of Cove's dad to let Cove buy something for you, too. You had to remember to thank him next time you saw him. After Cove paid, the two of you stepped out of the store, side by side, your dolphin balloons knocking together and spiraling around in the air. You watched Cove hold up his new pail to his face, examining it through. Hey, Cove? Yeah? Why is your dad always giving me money? Thank you for the keychain. Forget it. We said, thank you for the keychain. Thank my dad. Cove looked further down the street where different food carts were lined up. He rested his non-cast arm over his stomach, and just as he did, yours let out a light growl. You hadn't eaten since breakfast, and after all of this wandering around, you were definitely ready for some lunch. Let's get some food. Yeah. You two wandered around a short while, looking at all the delicacies that were available. Everything looked delicious, and as the different smells, both sweet and salty, wafted over you, your stomach growled even louder. After passing up hot dogs, snow cones, ice cream, and pizza, you both agreed on pretzels. Cove got something sweet and cinnamony, and we got chocolate. You licked your lips hungrily as the vendor handed you your pretzel over, ready to take a big bite. It had tiny marshmallows on it and was dripping with chocolate, just how you liked it. Your moms didn't like you to eat too much sugar, but this was a special occasion. You found an empty table close enough to the beach that the grit of the sand made a terrible noise when you dragged the chairs out to sit down. The balloons are going to make it hard to eat. Cove placed his bucket on the table as he stared at his still balled up hand that was wrapped around the string. You opened your mouth to agree before an idea hit you. I know! After carefully placing your pretzel somewhere it wouldn't get sandy, you tugged the balloon dolphin out of Cove's hand and tied it in a delicate bow around his wrist. Oh. Cove bounced his arm up and down in place, testing the stability of your knot. After watching his balloon jostle around, remain attached, he smiled, satisfied. There, now do mine. He repeated the ritual. Cove struggled somewhat, with the cast restricting his fingers on one hand and a string already tangled around the other. Got it. The two of you spent a moment admiring your handiwork, both hands now free to allow easy munching on your pretzels. You bit into the doughy treat, savoring the taste on your tongue with a smile as you looked out over the ocean. After a time, you finished your pretzel. You were done before Cove. It was boring not having anything to do. You pulled the string of your balloon to bring it down to your level, then held the dolphin in your hands, manipulating it to make it look like it was jumping through the air. If you turned a face towards the beach, it almost looked like it was swimming in the waves like a real dolphin. A laugh came at your side. Go back. When you glanced back at Cove, he had left the remaining part of his pretzel on the wrapper, and he was gripping his dolphin too. Merriweather, we said movie star. The trainers used fish and treats to help them perform tricks. They're the most famous dolphin in the world. You sighed, wishing you could star in a movie with a real-life dolphin. What's yours? Cove considered this question, placing the balloon against the table and resting his free arm around it in contemplation. It's... With a loud pop, the dolphin exploded into ribbons. Oh no! For a second, all Cove did was gape in shock, like you. Then his cheeks puffed up, squinting his eyes, and you saw tears start to glisten. I think we made a joke. Its name is Pop. That's a weird name for a dolphin. He continued to stare at the ribbons that remained. His brows furrowed. It's not funny, Harry. It's kind of funny. He sniffled, looking up at and narrowing his eyes even more at you. No, it isn't. It was still funny to you. His reaction was good, too. Cove spent the rest of the outing sniffling and didn't say much else. The passing of Cove's balloon was the last major event of your adventure. At the end, the two of you headed back late that afternoon. You separated on the beach while Cove went straight home with his brand new sand pail in hand. You decided to sit for a while. You watched the waves and the sunset filling with your new keychain. Another summer day was drawing to a close. It had been nice for the most part. Hopefully there wouldn't be any tears next time. Alright. I'm trying to think. This one's pretty short. Or at least we played it very short. One sweltering summer day, you were in the living room, Cove listening to the sound of birds chattering outside the window while you lay across the rug floor. Cove's dad had dropped him off earlier, and your moms had left the two of you along with Lizzie to play amongst yourselves. It had been too hot to go outside in the afternoon, at least according to Mommy, so your sister was starting to get impatient, waiting for her golf class that evening. The three of you had trouble finding something fun to do. The beach and playground were off limits, and you felt it was too warm for anything like playing with your fuzzy toy animals. Then, suddenly, a light came to Lizzie's big brown eyes, and her smile spread wide across her face. Having an idea gave her a new wave of energy. Since we're stuck inside, we should be adults. They don't play outdoors anyways. They're always inside telling everybody they're too busy to play. Why? I said why, and it'll be fun. Duh. What do they do inside that we don't, besides use the phone a lot? I can think of a lot of things. Not appropriate, but I can think of things. Excluding a small huff, Lizzie decided to ignore Cove. Ari, what do you think? Do you want to? Cove said it. That doesn't sound like fun. I bet we could come up with something else. I don't know. I don't want to. We'll go with Cove. Come on, neither of you have had one single idea all day. You could tell that Lizzie wasn't about to give in anytime soon. fine. With her victory against Cove under his belt, Lizzie turned to you triumphant. We said we had other stuff to do. I remember. We read a book. Fine, whatever. Play by yourself. Just don't be loud. Me and Cove will do it by yourself. It's decided. He looked ahead blankly. I guess. Now go on. Nodding goodbye to the two of them, you trailed off to find something else to do. Like he promised, Cove stayed put with Lizzie for the next couple of hours while you read a book. You could hear them talking as you sat with a book by the window. You opened the picture book in your lap and immediately got lost in the story. It was about a little donkey who grew up on a farm, making friends with all the animals and pretending to be like them. You liked the part where she swam around in the pond with the ducks. It was always made you laugh. You finished the book and went to get another, but before you could choose one, you noticed that Lizzie and Cove's voice were getting much louder. Curious about what was happening, you craned your neck to hear them better. At first, you mostly only picked up on Lizzie's high-pitched shouting, giving orders, telling Cove what to do, yelling about sports and the Olympics. That was pretty typical for Lizzie, so there was nothing new there. But then you started hearing Cove more and more as time went on. It sounded like they weren't really having a good time. We stayed put. We decided to mind our own business. You decided to stay where you were. It wasn't really your problem. You'd already stopped playing with them. You were having good enough time on your own. Decision made, at least with yourself, you turned your attention back to the cozy reading spot you'd decided to focus on instead. The afternoon passed normally for you, and the sun sank lower in the sky outside. Heat from the day seemed to cool off, too. You enjoyed the time on your own. You wish you had somebody to play with. You didn't mind it either way. We said we wanted to play with somebody else. Cove could have left her. You didn't want to do what Lizzie had suggested, and she probably didn't want to do what you were doing either. Suddenly, things erupted for real on the other side of the living room, and this time you couldn't ignore it. I'm going home. Good, you're terrible. Tears running down his face, Cove dashed out the front door, slamming it behind him so hard the wood rattled. Mom walked in soon as Cove ran away. Maybe she heard the door slam. I would've. Oh? Lizzie, Ari, where's our guest? From the other side of the room, you weren't really in a position to say anything. Still soaking, Lizzie stood up and dusted herself off. He went home. Already? He was busy. Isn't it time for us to get going already? I don't want to be late. Right. We better get a move on. Let's go, kids. Noelle, where did you leave the car keys? Mom hustled you all out the door, and you noticed during the car ride to golf practice that Lizzie was quieter than usual. She was usually the first one to request which music to listen to in the car, but she didn't say anything. Your parents noticed she wasn't in the mood to be bothered. They gave her space, and Mommy just asked you what you'd like to listen to. We picked our favorite song. Eventually, Lizzie came around and started singing along with you. You both knew all the words, and your moms even sang along too. When the car ride was over, you spent the twilight hours watching Lizzie hit things with the other girls her age. You didn't know much about golf, but you could tell that she really liked it, so you sat with your moms and tried to puzzle it out. It was nice sitting outside after being cooped up in the house all day, and you stretched out your legs to let the last few minutes of sun warm your skin. When the sun was finally out of sight, dipping behind the horizon, you all got ready to leave. Instead of going straight home, your moms took your family to dinner. You went to a restaurant you had all been going to ever since you could remember. Thinking about it some more, you had no idea what Lizzie and Cove had really been up to, but you could tell that all of this helped Lizzie. You were confident the next time they saw each other, everything would be like normal. I know how that else could have played out on my own playthrough, and yeah, that's pretty short for what it ended up could have been. Let's go long day, because this is actually, I think, the longest besides Fireflies. It was another scorching summer day, and it was kind where no sooner had you finished one cup of water, you were already filling it up again. Everyone else had something on, so that afternoon it was just you and Shiloh. That didn't happen much, especially since Cove had arrived. Without Lizzie around, Shiloh looked at you for all the answers. It made you feel, we said frustrated. He was always wanting to hear what you thought instead of giving his own opinion, and expected you to come up with the plans. It was hard work, especially for such a hot day. You drank yet another drink and frowned at the empty vessel. Your thirst was gone, but you still craved something icy cold and refreshing, something sweet like an ice cream cone. Nothing beat a classic creamy scoop of ice cream on a day like this. There was nothing like that to be found at home. You knew that without needing to look. Your moms didn't keep sweets in the house. Outside, there was plenty of places where such goodies could be obtained, but they were shops demanding payment in exchange for their products. We just sighed. As much as you really wanted a treat, it wasn't going to happen. What's wrong? I want an ice cream cone. Slow had been draped over the sofa, perked up. That sounds good. We don't have anything here, and I don't have any money. Oh, let me check if I have any. Slow rummaged in his backpack and proudly produced an assortment of coins, plus one button. He set the button aside and counted the coins in neat piles. Just over $1, you announced this to Shiloh, and he almost certainly come to the same conclusion, but had been watching you expectantly. We said that's not enough. I'm sorry. We need to find some more. Okay. The two of you lifted couch cushions and stuck hands down deep into crevices in the sofa under furniture and scoured the back of drawers. Most of what you found was useless, gross, bent paper clips, fluffy wisps with dust, sand, crumbs, but every so often one of you would strike silver or bronze and add it to the growing pile of coins. Dusty and disheveled from checking every room and square and squinting into every tiny nook, the two of you finished pulling your finds, and Shiloh held his breath as you counted the coins once again. $2.53 and two buttons. You didn't know when the second button had decided to join the party, but you were too pleased with your successful haul to throw it out. Is that enough? You figured he knew the answer without looking to you for confirmation, but the thrill of your success and reward that would follow canceled out any other feelings you might have had about it. Yeah. You could now afford something at the shops, just one thing, but that was infinitely better than none. Slow clapped his hands. Yay! The two of you dashed outside as the promise of sugar buoyed you onto your destination were breathless but happy. You stared at the overwhelming number of options. You knew what you wanted, but it wasn't just you who had contributed to the fun, to get the treat. He seemed to notice your pause. Sorry. Are you getting an ice cream cone? Slow asked as though he was entirely separate from the decision rather than someone with a stake in the outcome. Do you mind? Slow cocked his head to the side. It was your idea. You should choose. You went ahead and got what you wanted originally. Are you sure it's really okay? You tried to get something you both wanted anyway. We went with this one. Yeah. Really? Yeah, really. Please. You bought the dessert you longed for. Sweet success. Finally, the reward for all your hard work was in your hands. You lapped at the soft ice cream. The sweetness perked you up. You held it out to Shiloh, and so he could take his turn. He shook his head. You can finish it. He didn't want any after everything he did to help get it? That was weird. But you accepted the offer. You tried to include Shiloh. You hesitated. We tried to include Shiloh. Even if Shiloh said it was okay, every story you'd ever seen on TV or in a book said that sharing was caring. You stood your ground, even as the treat started to trickle dangerously toward your fingers. It's only fair that you have some. We both bought it. But you want it more than I do, and getting to play was a lot of fun already, so you can have it. That's more fair. You held it out to him. I want you to have some, even more than I want to finish it, so eat your part. Relenting, Shiloh took the treat and gave it a taste. His eyes lit up. It's really good, thank you. You smiled, pleased with your good deed. You picked the best one. Did he mean that? Shiloh was always nice no matter what happened. Even if he hated it, you knew he wouldn't say so. Maybe he thought it was gross, and that's the real reason why he didn't want to take some. You had no idea. You studied him as he ate a little more. He had every appearance of enjoying himself. Still weird. The two of you began to head back home as he ate. You walked side by side on the shore in silence, but your thoughts kept drifting to the boy beside you. Why didn't he speak up for himself? It was almost as if Shiloh didn't know how to say what he felt or was too afraid to. We didn't say anything, but we were sad for him. I remember that. Not being able to talk to people isn't fun, and you didn't want to be the kind of person people were scared to tell their honest opinion to. You considered asking Shiloh about it, but if he couldn't give an opinion on something like ice cream, he wasn't going to open up about this. You hoped for the best. Maybe you were wrong, or you were right. Maybe he'd feel better about it soon. Shiloh made you unsure about setting a label on the experience of spending the afternoon with just him. There had been good times, and there had been confusing ones. You were positive of one thing at least. The treat was delicious, and that was nice. The sun was low on the horizon. You returned to your neighborhood, and you spotted two very familiar figures ahead, Lizzie and Cove. You opened your mouth to make your presence known to them just as you saw the tears on Cove's face. You walked straight over, slow at your heels. Once there, you We asked what happened. Without a time machine, the only way you were going to find out was by asking the witnesses. Lizzie might have done something, but she could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, or even come to Cove's aid. You wanted to hear the story. Cove, what happened? Ari, I got yelled at. He took a deep, steadying breath. Some grandparents got mad at me. Aw, sorry. Lizzie jerked her head in the direction of a nearby house. Your heart sunk. You knew exactly what happened. Every year, the same mean old couple rented out the condo for the summer. You, Lizzie, and Shlo knew to stay away from them, but Cove couldn't have. They're like that with everyone. Even your mom struggled to find anything nice to say about them, but the elderly pair particularly took offense to kids. Yeah, Lizzie said. You. Lizzie drew herself up at that. She looked disappointed in your direction. Uh-huh, I was helping. That's cool. Is there anything I can do? No, I'm just gonna stay away. Or you could teach them a lesson. There was a devilish glint in her eyes. What? You should ding-dong dish them. Go ring the doorbell and run. It'll be great, because they're too slow. They'll never catch you. That's dumb. I don't want to go near them ever again. You're saying that because you're a cluck-cluck chicken. Clove glared, but it didn't take the bait. Lizzie turned to you. You're not chicken, are you? Yeah, I remember this. We act like a chicken. She can't tease you about being a chicken if you are, in fact, a chicken. Hunched over, you folded your arms to form wings and batted them up and down. Bark, bark, bark. For once, your sister seemed at a loss, but it didn't take long for her to regain her usual confidence. So you admit it. You continued to flap your arm wings as you circled your sister, clucking all the while. There's no shame in a chicken being a chicken. Yeah, you're a chicken. Things were not going the way Lizzie expected. She fought against a laugh and looked for a way to restore her serious authority. You and Cove are both little chickens. Bark! Cove folded his arms, though the one with the cast wasn't as tightly tucked down, and joined you in cheeping around. It was hard to cluck through the giggles that rose up when you saw him, imitating a chicken, but you still both gave a first-class performance. The door to the old couple's condo flung open to reveal one of its culprits behind Cove's tears. You froze, wings raised. Can't you let anybody have a bit of peace and quiet? He must not be a fan of theater or farm animals, as well as kids. That was the only explanation for his outburst, which was far louder than anything you and Cove had done. Go on, beat it. It was distinctly unfair, but Cove's lip was trembling, and you thought it would be best to heed his command. Lizzie took off, and it was Shlo immediately trailing after her, without as much as a glance back in your direction. So much for friendship. You waved your arms at Cove, summoning him to follow you, and you ran after Lizzie. The old man hollered propelled you all the way from the street to the sanctity of the hill. Only once you were safe did you notice the stitch in your chest and the ache in your legs. You flopped down in the blades of grass, tickling your face. Lizzie, who had taken the lead in the end, was already lazily on the ground. The four of you took a moment to catch your breath and enjoy the feeling of cool grass against your skin. Hey, Cove. Cove lifted his head. I told you there were mean grandparents around here. Cove rolled his eyes, then decided this wasn't dismissive enough and rolled his whole body away from your sister. Lizzie chose to ignore his response and started chanting to Shlo, who was eagerly joining in the conversation. In the back of your mind, you knew you'd be second fiddle again to Shlo once Lizzie came around. It was always like that. And we were annoyed by it. But you weren't going to make a fuss, especially after everything that already happened. You closed your eyes, laid on your side, and relaxed. Some time passed with you like that. It felt good to take a real break. You moved onto your back with a small smile and looked at the darkening sky. A blanket of clouds reminded you of thick throw you curled under on cold, rainy days. You wondered if the clouds would be as soft. They lazily floated on by, spinning from each other, merging and morphing into new shapes. We saw a car. You saw a boxy car drifting through the sky. You nudged Cove and pointed to it. Doesn't it look like a car? Cove joined, gazing skywards. Not really. Hey! He chuckled at your reaction. Ah, the animation. So nice. All the sun's light faded from the sky, and the moon rose higher. Lizzie got to her feet, dusting strands of grass from her bare legs and surveying her surroundings. The ocean visible from the crest of the hill beckoned with every sweep of the tide. Let's go to the beach. There was no argument from the other two. Slow was still slow, and Cove would never say no to going to the shore. He was a child of the sea. You, we were not going, we were happy doing what the others wanted. I remember that. The beach wouldn't necessarily have been where you chose to go next, but if that was where the others wanted, then you weren't going to spoil the fun. Whew. He stepped on the sand for the second time that day, but it felt different at night. The beach was nearly quiet at this hour. Abandoned sandcastles and footsteps in the sand too big to belong to any of you were the only indications how busy it had been only hours earlier. The four of you kicked shoes off and removed socks and walked along the water's edge. The thick waves tickled your feet. I wonder what would happen if you tried to take a bath in the ocean with shampoo and everything. It would be bad for the fish. I didn't say anyone would do it. Jeez, you don't have to be serious about everything. You're the one who asked, and that's what would happen. That is what would happen. It hurt the fishies. I like bubble baths at home. They're a lot of fun. Me too. Bubble baths are luxurious. You'd never heard Lizzie use that word before. Mommy loves to have bubbles in her bath. She'll turn the lights off and have candles. I'm gonna do that next time. Hey, when's your mom coming to pick you up anyway? Not for a while. She's busy. What about your dad? How come you never talk about him? Nobody does. Don't you know you're not supposed to ask something like that? Why would somebody want to talk about something they never talk about? You kept your eyes on the ground, watching your toes get swallowed up by the waves. Even if Shiloh never seemed upset when this topic came up, it made you feel awkward just for having both your moms. It's okay. I'm like Lizzie and Ari. I don't have a dad, but I don't have two moms. I just have one. She's really great. Oh, sorry. I only have one now too. Mom isn't here. She's back home. It's just my dad with me. I never had a dad or anything, so I don't feel bad. It's really sad that your mom is gone. Cove nodded. We talked about how all of our parents were good. Yeah. Cove couldn't muster a response. You don't think he truly disagreed, though. The silence broke with a splash as Lizzie kicked in your direction. Cold water and sodden sand splattered against your leg. Lizzie giggled, foot still outstretched from the kick. Cove joined in the striking, the incoming waves, to make a splash of his own. Slow scurried out of Cove's spray zone with a grin. We retaliated. You used your foot to smack the water pooling around you, sending an arc of sea foam flying back to your sister. You laughed as she sputtered as some of the salty seawater, having landed in her mouth, she spat it out. Yuck! Lizzie chased you, intent on revenge. You dashed up and down the coast, taking in turns to be the predator of the prey, as well as joining forces to take down Shiloh or Cove. Alliances were silently forged and wordlessly broken. Everything's fair game in war. Ah! So brief explanation was drowned out by the biggest splash yet, caused by him falling face first onto the ground. That would have been bad enough without the waves that followed, cascading over his prone body. Shiloh sat up, shaking his head like a dog coming in from the rain, as you all hurried over to check on him. His hair was plastered to his head, and his soaked clothes clung. If there was any part of him that was still dry, you couldn't see it. That was crazy. Are you okay? Yeah, my foot got stuck and I fell over. Why should go, Shiloh, you Dumbo? We offered to help him up. Shiloh didn't take your outstretched hand. After a moment, you dropped it. Lizzie was too busy snickering to notice and held her hand out to Shiloh, too. He reached over and took it. Slowly, he started to pull himself from the ground. Then he slipped back on the slick sand and dragged him and Lizzie down, just in time for another wave to hit. The water rolled over them. Poof! Sorry. What were the odds of that happening twice in a row? You thought they must be pretty low, but there was no way Shiloh would do something like that on purpose, then pretend it was an accident, especially not to Lizzie. Even if your relationship with Shiloh felt unclear, he did at least like her a lot. Lizzie was his favorite, right? Smiling boldly, Lizzie extracted herself from the ground and wiped a streak of sand from her cheek. She didn't intend on letting this embarrass her. Shiloh got up again this time without incident. He still looked like a drowned puppy, but that didn't stop Cove laugh at the two of them. With that, it was time to call it a day. The four of you made your journey back home, leaving a trail of wet footsteps and sand in your wake. Damp clothes may have weighed down some of the group, but your spirits were high. Your arms swung side to side and a cool breeze flowed past. Your moms were outside chatting to Cove's dad. We're back! Your mom's face fell as they took in the state of you all were in, ranging from messy to soaked. Elizabeth, is that all you have to say for yourself? You brought half the beach back with you. They certainly did. What's Marigold gonna do when she comes to get Shiloh? Is that how you want him to be for the long drive home, cold and filthy? Lizzie's expression turned to sulky over the scolding. Being the oldest could be fun, but it also meant she was the first to get in trouble when something went wrong. Mr. Holden, on the other hand, chuckled as he ruffled Coe's matted hair. You'd been out making memories, Bucko. I'm glad you had a good time with your friends. Cove used his slightly moist cast iron to push his dad off. Mr. Holden's eyes widened when he noticed even that had gotten wet. Now he was worried too. I think they could have found a less risky way to spend time and had just as much fun. That might be right, kids. What can you do? Come on, Cove, let's get you all cleaned up, dried off. We wouldn't want that cast to have to be reset. Cove winced as the thought. "'Kay. That a boy." Mr. Holden casually bent down and plucked Cove off the ground, ultimately holding Cove against his chest. Sand was already transferring from Cove onto him, but that didn't seem to bother Mr. Holden. Cove protesting being carried, but only got a reassuring pat on the back for his troubles. Good night, Cove. Thank you for talking, Cliff. Night, Payne family, and Shiloh too. Well, we'd better do what we can to fix you guys up too. Come on, everybody, inside. I want you marched straight to the downstairs bathroom. Yes, Mom. Okay, Lizzie's mom. Don't worry about stopping to wipe your feet on the mats this time. That won't do much good tonight. Sitting on the old beach towel, your mommy waited in the hall until you were less sandy and weren't allowed to go to your room or walk around the house. But you did get to eat a sandwich for dinner there. It felt like an indoor picnic. It had been decided that Shiloh would wash first and borrow some of your clothes. He was already finished and packed away in his mom's car. Miss Fields had come to collect him a little while ago. It was a bit of a funny experience seeing him without that hat on for once. Lizzie being much more soaked than you got in the tub next. It wasn't a bubble bath, as she had hoped. This was a no fun allowed cleanup session. At least that's what she claimed. Not much longer it would be your turn. When the bath was done, you'd have to go right to bed. After a day like this, though, you were glad there weren't going to be any further events. Drifting off to sleep sounded like a great idea. Water. At this pace, I think we might be able to get through the end of the summer into, like, the intro to the next step. Cove wasn't able to do many things that summer. When you and him and Slow sat on the shoreline, one bright morning, you could tell he wanted to be in the water. There was no way he'd be swimming any time soon, not with his cast. The waves washed a single shell on shore, glittering a blue, another reminder of the places he couldn't go. From what you'd heard about Cove's old life so far in tiny pieces and fragments, you could tell that he'd do anything to be able to get that cast off, even cut it off himself if he could. You thought about how his summer last year must have been totally different from this, with his old home and his mom and dad. But now he was here with you and Shiloh and Lizzie and everyone else, and he couldn't even go into the sea. This town wasn't bad. It had all your favorite things in it, but sitting there on the same beach you had grown up on, you could understand that not everybody else felt the same way about Sunset Bird as you did. You watched him from the corner of your eye quietly and finally said aloud what you'd been pondering. I wish I could go in. The water? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you going to be able to do it soon? Cove sighed in response. Apparently soon wasn't soon enough. It's so pretty, the ocean. And huge. It could be anything out there, like mermaids. Yeah. Swimming might be fun if we could. I remember that one. But it's not like there's anything we can do about it. Obviously not interested in hearing much more of your input on the situation, Cove turned back to the water. But he looked away. Something about Shiloh's slow, careful movements caught his eye. Are you building sandcastle? Sort of. I was only playing around while you were talking. I'm listening. Maybe I could too. I've only made sand big piles before. It's really nothing special. I'm sure you'd be good at it right away. Well, how do you do it then? Shiloh's cheeks lit up. You could tell he was a little bit uncomfortable to have Cove expectant stare on him. I'll play too. I love making sand stuff. That's what we decided. He put his hands back to his seashells in the sand and nodded. I don't do a lot. Here's how I like to get a house started. Slow focused more intently than you'd ever seen him guide Cove through his process. You happily used your own method. It did take long for the three of you to each have a humble structure prepared. That's all kind of. You can do anything now, like make it bigger, add some seashells, carve pretty patterns. I bet you have great ideas. I'm gonna make it bigger. Mine's gonna be a real castle. Cool. This is gonna be a house. Looking at the base of your sandcastle, you decided to make a mansion. Looking at the base of your sandcastle, you decided to design a mansion. That was the better part of the next hour. It was spent focusing on your own work. The boys were the same. Even Slow didn't speak as many peaks at everyone else's as he usually did. You finished shaping before either of them did, glancing up what from you belt. It seems you got done so fast because they already searched around for extra decorations. So I had grabbed most of the really interesting stuff, and Cove had a lot of the shells, but there were still options. The first thing you reached for was, we got the sea glass, because I had never seen it. It was the best fit for your mansion, you decided. It was see-through and sparkly. You displayed it in the front and center, making headline feature of your whole thing. Pleased with your result, you finally took a proper look around, wasn't focused on the sand itself. Both Cove and Schlo seemed super immersed still. You knew you could probably sneak a peek at either one's work. We were polite and did not. You instead watched some clouds go by. The silence was then broken. What's on top of yours, Shalo? You peeked closer, discovered something shiny sticking out of Shalo's sand chimney. Oh, it's a gum wrapper. It looks like smoke. That's good. That's smart. It's good. That's smart. Sorry. We said he should be an architect. You'd be good at it, Shalo. Shalo smiled without a word. And that was that for the current topic. Eri, can I see what you did? Sure. He began surveying your work. All you knew about mansions was they were supposed to be big, so you'd gone really big. It was the size of the country club that Lizzie played golf at compared to Cove and Shlo's building, probably even bigger. Shlo quickly decided to jump in the new conversation. Hey, Eri, what did you do? It's a mansion. Looks great. Your house is so big. It's not a house, it's a mansion. I think we just said it was a really big house, huh? Is being a house bad? No, but we each made our own place. Nobody's is the same. I think we are. Cove raised an eyebrow at that. If something is the only one of that thing, it makes it special. Yeah, for sandcastles and stuff. People too. My dad always says everybody is their own man, a real individual. I don't think I'm very special. Why not? Nobody else is you. So simply shook his head. I'm not so different. A beat passed between the two. Cove then looked down at his own work again. Okay. He didn't seem to be bothered, leaving the disagreement hanging there. Cove had other things on his mind. My dad tried to get me to make sandcastles the first time we came to this beach. I didn't want to. Cove trailed off again. There was another moment of silence. Shlo shifted, opened his mouth to say something, but Cove spoke up before he could. You didn't think he noticed that Shlo was going to talk. Hey, do you know what happened when your moms met my dad, Eri? You cocked your head thinking about it briefly. I wasn't there. They didn't tell me. I just remembered what happened when I met your dad. Mr. Holden had been a weird stranger then, but he was still kind of strange. No other parents acted like him, but you knew him better at this point. Now that you thought about it, it made quite a lot of sense that Cove's dad talked to him about people being unique. You were pulled from your thoughts when Cove continued. Oh, well, I was there. I don't think my mom has met your dad. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she hasn't. Mary's parents and my dad met at the same day I met them. I was going to say what happened. Slow frowned to himself, ducking his head. His hat cast shadows over his face. You could still tell he was upset about not being included in Cove's choice of topic. That was kind of boring for him, though. Giving people their own turns to say things they want is important too. We did mention Eri. Shalo was trying to say something. Huh? We were talking, just not right now. I'm talking to you. He can listen. Slow's expression barely flickered at the words. He still looked puffed off. Cove continued like the interruption hadn't happened. He was determined to tell the tale. When we moved here, he didn't bring a lot of things with us, only some stuff that would fit in Dad's car. We didn't even get a moving truck. I sat there while Dad brought it all inside. I didn't want to get out because I knew Dad would make me look around the new house. I really didn't want to do that. His lips twisted into a frown as he recalled that. When I saw your moms, they were in the car too and stopped at your house. I guess they were coming back from somewhere or something. My dad noticed. He waved his hands, then went over the front of your house and where he started talking to them. I don't know what they said. I couldn't hear it, but he couldn't see me anymore since he was looking the other way. So I opened the car door and left. I wanted to get away and went behind the house. I found those hills, the ones where you and me met for the first time. Ugh, it's a lot of talking and my voice very dry. Ugh. Sorry, I'm trying to give my voice a second. It looks like somebody followed me. Cool. So I opened the car door and left. I wanted to get away and went behind the house. I found those hills there, the ones where we met for the first time. Cove nodded, then stared at you, then stared back. He didn't go on to say anything more. What? That's all you had wanted to say? His brow wrinkled, like he didn't understand why you were surprised. That's all that happened. Okay. What? What is it? What? You said that in a weird way. You're crazy. Cove narrowed his eyes at your suspicion. Show's mouth twisted into a scowl of disbelief, but he said nothing. Why do you bring it up anyway? There was a slight shrug of Cove's shoulders. I was thinking about it because of the sandcastles. It made me remember when I moved here, Dad showed me the beach first before we went back to the car to unpack. He was really excited about it for some reason. Cove's brows furrowed a little more as he quietly raked his hand through the sand. I get it. You thought maybe Mr. Holden wasn't that excited about the beach and was instead hoping Cove might be. But the line of conversation had come to an end. Even Cove was done with it. Some other topic had popped into his head. Joe fidgeted uncomfortably in the sand, had made Cove aware of his presence again. They looked at each other, and you could only wonder what it might be about. Hey, Shallow? Yeah? Why are you always turning so red, even when nothing's happening? Clearly startled, he jerked back. Neither you or Shallow had expected that to be how he got included in the conversation again. I don't know, I guess. Okay, it's kind of weird. Shallow's eyes were wide with embarrassment, and his lips twitched, and he was blushing even harder than before. Maybe it wasn't only this, perhaps it was simply last straw, but it was a big deal to Shiloh, a huge deal. He didn't look sad, he looked almost panicked. You weren't sure if he was about to cry, run away, or what, but you soon got an answer. Why do you wear glasses? Most kids don't wear glasses, and nobody is named Cove. Who asked you to come? It was probably just your dad bugging Aries family some more, because you don't have anyone else who will ever play with you. Uh, Cove blinked. That's cold, Shallow. The tension on the beach was suddenly uncomfortable in a way you didn't know how to move past. It didn't seem like the kind of thing he'd get upset about. You thought you had, though you hadn't ever known what kind of thing would bother Shallow. I'm sorry. Me too. I was just wondering. Uh, I remember we went to play on our own. You shrugged, not in the mood to work out their problems, and started to build another mansion next to your first one. Both of your playmates noticed immediately and turned away from each other. What are you doing? I'm going to finish my next one before both of you. So glanced at you, then Cove, who had already started digging up more sand. You all went back to making more sand buildings, but the whole mood had changed. Slow's cheeriness was clearly gone, and Cove looked as confused as ever about why the other boy had blown up. The air stayed uncomfortable the rest of the afternoon, right up to the moment that Shallow's mom appeared at the beach to take him home. Cove and Shallow had mostly followed your lead and barely said a word. His mom standing behind him, even Shallow's goodbye had been quiet, friendly, cheerful, but noticeably quiet. But with Shallow gone and the sun going low, you knew it was time for you and Cove to head to your own houses, so you led the way to path back home. The walk home was quiet. You passed by a familiar landmark, shoes thumping against the sidewalk, near perfect unison. Cove was clearly caught up thinking about something. You asked what he was thinking. You didn't want to leave it hanging in the air, so you decided to just ask. Why are you making that face? Oh, I was just wondering. Cove fell silent again for a few seconds, then sighed. Why'd Shiloh act like that when I said he was read a lot? I said that he got embarrassed. Embarrassed, but I didn't say anything that bad. It might have upset him anyway. Hmm. I guess I can get it. Why he would do that. Sometimes I get really mad too. Despite seemingly coming to a conclusion, Ko's mood was still sour. What Shlo said didn't make sense anyway. Parents always talk to other parents and set up stuff so their kids play together. My dad didn't do anything weird. You struggled not to make you struggled not to make a face at that. His dad definitely did something weird to try and get you to spend time with Cove. But Cove didn't know that. Nobody's making me spend time with you. I remember we were trying to be nice. Cove's shoulders relaxed. You hadn't even noticed that he had tensed up. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Anyway, I knew the whole time Shlo wouldn't have been saying things like that. You nodded. You didn't speak. You kept your eyes firmly on the ground. By now, the two of you were on the sidewalk near your house. It was time to part ways. Bye, Cove. Your parents hadn't planned anything else for you. That you knew that you'd see him eventually. Cove nodded, already turning away. Bye, Ari. You made your way to your house at a leisurely pace, going up the driveway to get to the front door. Before you went inside, you looked back. Cove was halfway to his house, his hands shoved into his pockets. You still felt a little unsure with what you were supposed to do about the deal Cove's dad had offered. You didn't want to say anything bad or something you shouldn't. You might change your mind sometime. There was always tomorrow, after all. But for now, it was definitely something you'd keep to yourself. With a final look, you went back into your house. All right, water. We're powering through. We're almost back to where we were yesterday. And today, it's not just pointed at my face. You can see shit. So I won't feel bad about it. Or at least I don't feel bad about I don't feel bad about going as fast as I have through and not like reading everything. But I probably will read everything when we get past Fireflies because I think I'll only been going for an hour. We'll get through Fireflies and then we'll go through the the end of the summer, and then we'll get into the next, and then I'll call it a night there. All right, tonight we're going to catch fireflies. At this blunt declaration from your sister, you looked up from your macaroni and cheese dinner. Fireflies were a familiar sight over the summer, coming out on warm nights to dance through the sky. Tonight was particularly balmy. You knew there would were bound to be a ton of them around. Oh, are you? We pushed food around our plate. We didn't justify it with a response. You like catching flyers just as much as the next kid, but you wish Lizzie would ask what you wanted to do for a change. That's a good idea, Liz. Can we, Miss Payne? Slow tapped his fork against the table excitedly, his face lighting up as he looked at Lizzie. It was unusual for Shiloh to still be here. Like always, his mom had to bring him over really in the morning before her job started, but normally she would have picked him up by now. She called before dinner to let your moms know she'd be late. You didn't hear why, probably more work things. You thought maybe getting to hang out with Shiloh for longer is what made Lizzie want to keep running around outside. Staying at home and watching TV was never an option for her with guests over. That's why you were pretty sure she'd get your moms to agree. Well, it's already so dark out there. Lizzie gave Mom the best puppy dog eyes she could, slowly spooning mac and cheese into her mouth. You waited for their responses. Let them go. Nights like this don't happen every day. Your parents exchanged a look, then Mom eventually sighed and nodded back. Yes. Fine, fine. Just make sure you stay on the hill behind our house with all the poppies, okay? Duh, Mom, that's where most of them are. The idea had only just been planted in your head, but already you could just picture all the glowing lights spread in front of you like the fairies from bedtime stories Mom read sometime. Lizzie and Shiloh started digging into their food, and it soon became a race to see who could finish their dinner first. Are you excited to go outside and play, Ari? You gave a non-committal shrug. Ari's just mad because I always catch the most. Lizzie boasted proudly, her mouth full of food. Mom gave her a stern look. Elizabeth! A knock on the door interrupted Mom before she could no doubt scold you and your sister. I'll get it. Your sister jumped out of her seat and ran over to the door, pulling it open without even looking out the window to see who it was. Huh? You shifted in your seat, trying to get a glimpse of the unexpected guest. Good evening, Cove. Your mom had already walked to the door by the time you managed to see past Shillow's flappy hat. Ooh. Cove? Why is he here? Had your parents invited him over? You certainly hadn't heard anything about it. You tried to catch Cove's eye, but he was too busy staring at the ground in front of him. Going back to shoveling fork full of macaroni in your mouth, you kept one ear on the conversation. Then, for a few seconds, Cove said nothing. He only stood there and looked up at your mommy with a face almost like she was considering turning, almost as if he was considering turning around and leaving. My dad told me to drop this off because I guess he borrowed it from you. Cove took a familiar screwdriver out of his large side pocket, eyes now dropping to the floor. We left ours back home when we moved. Great, thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here, why don't you come in for a bit? Lizzie crossed her arms and lifted her chin. Cove shrugged, and Mom stood from the table too. I'll give your dad a call and let him know you got here all right. Cove huffed fully inside, eyes remaining on the ground. Mommy closed the door behind him. Hi, Cove. Shlo gave Cove a friendly smile while waving by, holding up his hand and closing his fingers. Cove nodded in response. We asked if he wanted to come with us. I remember that. From the corner of your eyes, you could see Lizzie glaring at you for mentioning the excursion to an outsider. Trying not to meet her gaze, you looked at Cove. Whatever Lizzie thought of him, he wasn't exactly a stranger anymore. We're going to catch fireflies on the hill out back.
Okay.
I want to see them. I've never caught one before. It's too bad he didn't have a chance before now. The fireflies weren't out when he first moved in, and there must not have been any where he used to live. We can't go out until after dinner. After she pointed this out, Lizzie walked back to the table to look at her seat. There wasn't much left on her plate. Since this was very true, you decided to finish up your own stuff as well. Cove stepped closer and eyed what was on the menu for your family's meal. Hey, have you eaten? Yeah, my dad and I ate earlier. What'd you have? Eggs. The clipped one-word answer seemed to discourage Slow from asking any more questions. His eyes slowly wandered back to the last scraps of food on his plate. Her phone call with Cove's dad must have ended because your mom came back to the room.
Okay.
Cove, your dad said you can stay for a little while, if you'd like, but he's going to come get you before it gets much later. Sure.
Fun.
Oh, fun. This will be so nice. You polished off the meal. You hoped it would be too. The three of you all finished eating shortly after, and Lizzie led the way outside. Remember, don't stray too far. It's fine, Mom. Slow trailed so closely after Lizzie, he was nearly stepping on her heels. Cove hesitated at the door. Come on, let's go. After a moment, he did.
Bye.
Bye, children. The two of you were good 10 or 15 feet behind Lizzie and Shiloh. By the time you walked outside, you pushed the door shut behind you, watching the figures get farther and farther away. You're so slow, Ari. We don't have all night. You started to run when you heard Lizzie's voice calling to you, but paused when you saw Cove was still walking at a relaxed pace. I think we walked with him. You knew there wasn't really any real hurry, but you couldn't help staring longingly at Slow and Lizzie getting farther and farther away. The two of you followed after the footsteps Lizzie and Slow left behind, till you reached the hill behind your house. Lizzie already climbing to the top, Slow was spinning in circles somewhere around the middle. Upon seeing the gently glowing winking lights, you moved a bit faster, eyes widening in delight. Wow. Slow took a moment to come over and welcome you both to the hill. Hi guys, it's really great out, huh? See how many there are? Yeah. A firefly danced through the air, landing on Cove's sea green head. Ugh. So, we looked on, like, we didn't react to that. You took a couple steps back, slowly trying not to spook the little bodies, as you admired how it glowed so brightly against Cove's hair. Cove raised an eyebrow, giving you a confused look, and Slow giggled. You gestured to his head, and then reached up, making the firefly dart away. Cove jumped and followed after the glow. Oh look, Lizzie has one. That's amazing. Slow ran to the highest point on the hill, making sure not to lose his hat or backpack along the way. You hummed as the group divided and conquered, shifting your gaze to the dozen of other fireflies sailing around. The game was on. I remember we picked 2 band-aids because I was accident prone. Spotting one close by, you approached it with assassin-like stealth, crouching down, making yourself seem like less of a threat. Slowly dragging one foot in front of the other, you crept up towards it, arms outstretched. You closed your hands around the little glowing orb, careful not to crush it. The firefly landed on your palm, almost docile. You stared down at your prize in delight. Its tiny legs tickled your skin, and you giggled at the sensation. Cove kept up with his own target, but when he tried to grab it, his pink cast waved awkwardly through the air, foiling his efforts to clasp his hands around the firefly. Ugh. Cove watched it vanish in the air with a dissatisfied expression on his face. We wanted to show him. Cove, look over here. I got one. Come see. Cove didn't notice you. He was more preoccupied with continuing the hunt, hopefully without his cast getting in the way this time. It was fine. You had your own plans. We decided to sit in the grass and watch. You quietly took a seat amongst the flowers, and the others were jumping and dashing all about. You saw how many times they succeeded and failed, how Charlotte almost tripped a couple of times. It was dramatic. It was a dramatic show, though around you it was calm. The lights of the was dramatic. It was a dramatic show, though around you it was calm. The lights of the stars and the fireflies surrounded you peacefully. It was a beautiful night. You laughed quietly to yourself as you watched the others and Shiloh finally manage to catch fireflies between his small hands. His eyes lit up, and when he spread his fingers to take a peek at it, the bug escaped and flew off into the air. Oh! You watched as he pounced after it once more, but your eyes soon landed on Cove, who had failed to catch a firefly yet. You cheered him on. I remember, we wanted to be nice. You can do it, Cove. Cove smiled at you for just a moment before returning to the fireflies, been trailing with his renewed enthusiasm. Cove returned to hunting fireflies. You settled for laying back against the soft grass, watching the poppy swaying around you and the fireflies hovering against the vast sky. Airy, Cove, get up here. We're going to have a race. The shouting caught you off guard. It had been quite a while since you heard from Lizzie or Shiloh. You glanced over to see them both standing at the top of the hill again, Lizzie beckoning you with a quick hand gestures. If she was like that, you knew there wasn't much room for disagreement. Up in the incline you went. From the corner of your eyes, you saw Cove was coming as well. He didn't care for Lizzie a lot, so you thought he might be intrigued by just the idea of a race. Hi. Hi, Cove. You can't roll down the hill. You could hurt your arm again. You'll be the referee for the rest of us. As Lizzie pointed this out, Cove froze up in place. Oh, it was that kind of race. He frowned down at his cast. It was the second time it got in the way tonight. And this wasn't even the first time she had asked him to be the referee for one of her sudden races. What? Yeah, you'll watch and see who gets to the bottom first. That's important. Got it?
Yes.
I guess. The cast was sturdy. If he was careful, he could have done it. Lizzie might just be looking for a reason to make someone else the referee, but it was already decided. We just stayed with Cove.
Really?
Really? You don't have to. It's okay, I want to watch. You moved beside him at the top of the hill, even though Lizzie eyed you and made a face. That's not how races work. We only need one referee. Shrugging your shoulders, you refused to budge, and Lizzie let out a huff before throwing her hands in the air. Fine, I'll be the winner whether you join or not. Lizzie moved to lay down, and Slow did the same. Cove stood slightly to the side to get a better vantage point, and you stood next to him. Countdown. Cove stood up a little straighter. It seemed like he was taking his newfound referee duties seriously. 3, 2, 1, go! Lizzie and Shiloh took off, letting gravity do the work and rolling at a high speed towards the bottom of the hill. You and Cove leaned forward, watching them go, eyes peeled for which of the two would reach the bottom first. They were both neck and neck until about halfway down the hill, Lizzie started to veer off the slight side, giving Shiloh a huge advantage. She obviously hadn't noticed a thing, and soon as Shiloh reached the bottom of the hill, he jumped up excitedly and threw his hand in the air. I won! Almost immediately, he fell back onto the grass, still dizzy from his roll down the hill. Lizzie stomped out of the bush she had ended up in, sputtering angrily and brushing the leaves from the front of her dress. Not bad, you got lucky. Let's do it again and see who wins for real. Kids, it's time to come in. No! You snickered, feeling grateful you hadn't been part of the mini debacle. You caught Cove's eyes and saw he was doing the same. You had gotten late and was beginning to feel just a bit chilly as you made your way out of the hills, but the cold in the air hadn't dampened anyone's spirits. The four of you walked back home together side by side down your neighborhood street, discussing everything, with each person trying to prove that they were the one who caught the most fireflies. You knew whoever really did catch the most didn't matter much anyways. All that mattered was that you had all had a good time, which, judging by the smiles on everyone's faces, you did. All right. We managed to make it through everything again. So now we can end the summer. I can stop reading and going through this like a madman. Yes! I'll never get tired of that view. You stood beside your moms and Lizzie as the four of you watched the sun dip into the ocean somewhere far, far away. You liked to imagine it cooling off in the water, resting itself before getting ready to shine brightly again tomorrow. That was a fun day. I didn't know they had magicians on the shopping street now. Neither did I. Oh no, we're so dull. Let's get out more. You didn't do real magic, Mom. How did you figure that one out? 'Cause I know that's not what real magic looks like. Oh, Lizzie dear, there's all kinds of magic in the world. Lizzie gave Mommy a suspicious look, but didn't dispute the claim. Well, we can't sit out here all night. Time to hurry home and get cooking. Who's helping with dinner? Lizzie immediately let out a groan. Mom, oh, didn't mean to do that one. Summer's almost over. She protested, but obvious you couldn't practically see the school from the horizon. You certainly didn't want to spend your last bits of freedom cooking dinner. You couldn't stop. You could do that any other day. Please, can we just play just a little longer? We have to keep playing before it's too late. It's almost over. Put on your best puppy dog eyes. Lizzie may not want to, but you had planned on going home. Okay. So when I was a kid, puppy dog eyes. That was the end of it. Oh, don't look at me like that. Like what? Soon we'll have homework and reading to do. We can't do work now too. Lizzie made her case and then stomped her foot in the ground. You mimicked her, feeling that it would add something to the argument. Well, come on, Pam. I can help you with dinner. Mommy leaned in for a hug, and you knew that you were very close to victory.
Okay.
All right. Every night, there's a freaking spider here. I gotta kill it real quick. Un momento, por favor. But it's like every night. Alright, now I can focus. But as soon as dinner's ready, you let her coming inside, understood? Yes, Mom. Yes. So much to do, so little time. Maybe I could still get seashell bracelet and the tins and trinkets. Or maybe the playground or the fireflies would probably come out, right? Don't I get a say in this? Silently made your own plans. We can't go too far. I'm going home. I would be angry and be like, don't I get a say? Lizzie looked over at you, narrowing her eyes like she was very seriously contemplating the answer to the question. A strong gust of wind made you shiver. Lizzie huffed as she wrapped her arms around herself.
Rude.
Doesn't the wind know that summer is not over yet? That's all Lizzie said before abruptly turning on her heels, heading off the direction your mother had gone. Where are you going? I'm going to my room. I have lots to plan if I want to make the most of tomorrow. You thought this over, looking off towards the water again. Lizzie didn't wait, and before long she was disappearing off down the road. We stayed outside. We were outside people. I was an outside kid. You watched Lizzie run off, twisting your lips as you considered what to do. At the end, the pretty sky and the soothing sounds of waves worn out. You strayed off the path, grinning at the feeling of sand quickly filling the empty space of your flip-flops. That was fun for a while, but you grew bored eventually. How could you enjoy the remainder of your summer time at the beach? Look for seashells? You drew in the wet sand? You roamed around. You looked for seashells. You walked down the shoreline, peering at the debris that washed up. Most of it was just seaweed, rocks, and trash, though now and then you'd spot a seashell. You picked up one of the ones that stood out to you until you had a nice little collection. It was a great evening, but soon enough you had your fill and you were ready to join your family back home. Not too much farther down, you spotted a familiar green head of hair moseying along the shore. We are going to see what he's up to. I'm curious. You strayed off the path and walked over to him. Cove knelt down, picking something up, and you quickly identified it as a smooth rock. He reared his arm back and tossed it into the water. You were impressed at how far he had gone, ready to sail out into the sea. It was a good toss. That was pretty neat. It wasn't a long throw, but he didn't care to try for that. The rock sunk kind of like a rock and fell back down almost right after he had tossed it. Kids, just like if you could throw far. can't keep rocking the ocean. What are you doing? Looked at your own rock. We're gonna ask him what he's doing. Cove jumped a little and he let out a small giggle. Sorry. What are you doing out here? I asked first. Cove frowned, turning back to the waves. I'm not doing anything, just thinking. Cove was looking down at his cast, scratching idly at the pink surface, even though you were pretty sure he couldn't feel it. His brows were furrowed, and there was a frown on his face. That's not fair. I had to wear this cast for ages. I can't even swim. Let's ask him how we got it. Because I know. But you guys probably want to know. I was jet skiing. Really? That's not fair. Cool? Your eyes widened. This would be... I would have been like, awesome. So let's go with cool. Your jaw had dropped at his answer. You wondered if he had broken his arm doing an awesome move like a loop-de-loop in the air. Cove looked a little taken aback by your outburst, but after a second he gave a small nod. He continued to explain. It crashed. He gestured to his arm as if to say, and was the result. It's hard to believe you're allowed to jet ski.
Whoa.
Well, I'm not. Oh. Cove let a huff, plopping down on the sand. I can't believe summer's almost over. You sat down next to him and nodded in agreement, regardless of the sudden topic change. I don't want to go to school. I mean, I would. I don't want to go to a new school. I think it'll be the same as you. I think it'll be the same school as you and Lizzie. My dad said something about that. So why don't you want to go? It's nice as far as schools go. You only ever been to the one school, but you were sure that his old school couldn't have been that much better. Then again, he did have to make new friends and meet new teachers. It could be kind of scary. Cove shook his head, then wrapped his good arm around his knee as he drew them into his chest. You heard a sniffling sound, and when you took a good look at his face, you realized that his eyes were wet. I want to go home. You weren't sure what to do. It felt weird just leaving him to cry here. Crying. Leave him here crying. But what could you say that would help? You frowned a little, staring at the sand. Okay, well, bye then. Cove gave his head a small shake. No, I want to go back home. Right. Cove wanted to go back to his old home, the one that's out waiting someplace far from here, the one that would bring up whenever he felt this sad. It had been a while since he had moved in, but it didn't seem to feel any better about being here. He settled back down into the sand, trying to consider what to do. Do you hate it here? This can be your home. It'll be all right. Let's ask him if he hates it here. His brow forward even more. Then he shook his head. You're not going to leave, right? You'll still be around. The question was a little surprising. Of course. Your parents would have mentioned if you were moving or something, right? After a second, Cove gave a little nod. Once I get my cast off, we could go swimming. You were fine with him changing the subject again. It'll be too cold then. You smiled, so he'd know you were only kidding. Cove smiled and then looked back at the waves. My dad keeps saying I'll get used to everything eventually, that I'll feel better then. It used to make me angry. I didn't want to get used to everything. He spared a glance over to Cove and saw the anger had slipped off his face in favor of something more puzzled. Something almost puzzled, sorry. But maybe that would be okay after all, as long as I really do feel better. I can't see it. The two of you sat quietly, just taking in the sound of the waves. Lost in thought, you started a bit when you heard a faint, familiar sound, the sound of your mom shouting your name. You looked over your shoulder, realizing it was probably time for dinner. Had you guys really been sitting out here that long? You dusted your sand off yourself. My mom's calling. It's time for dinner. You should come. Cove looked at your expression, screaming reluctantly, yet ultimately, okay. When you smiled, Cove returned one of his own. But the two of you couldn't stay there in your own little world any longer. You were being called forward. The both of you ran off towards your house, leaving the waves and the summer behind. Ugh! My throat. I tell you. The in-between. Okay, so we're gonna remain they. We're gonna keep most of that the same. But you know what? We're gonna change our hair a little. you know? Freshen it up. That works. Now let's go back. Just gonna look a little sophisticated, you know? You know what? We're gonna be a preteen, so we'll probably have acne. We're gonna have earrings. I prefer. You know what? We'll have that little ear ring. Perfect. No birthmarks, no scars, no freckles. We'll leave that. We already have that. We're gonna do braces. Because why not? Alright. Done. We're just gonna leave everything how it is. We'll be direct. And we're gonna be indifferent to him. Like, if he stays, if he goes, what do we really care? Because I'm achievement hunting. Yes. Okay. And now, I have seen 2 different versions of Cove just by leaving it neither, and it changes depending on what you choose. So we're going to see what he ends up looking like for us this time. August ended, September began. It was time to go back to school. Lizzie groaned and complained the entire first week. She hated going to classes. Still, there were interesting things to do that couldn't be done anywhere else. You weren't sure how Cove felt about it. He was enrolled that year. That was like a sign Cove would be staying in Sunset Bird for a while. At school, he was alright, but kept his distance from other kids, from what you saw anyway. He would pass you by in the halls, as if you didn't know each other. That was just fine with you. That year, the divorce of Cove's parents was finalized, and you overheard your parents talking about it, saying Cove's dad got full custody. At first, you were worried that meant bad news. It had made Mr. Holden cry, apparently. Then you found out it meant Cove would keep living with his dad. He would only stay with his mom a few weeks out of the year. Cove cried too, for different reasons, you thought. It seemed like Cove and his dad might move again, but Mr. Holden decided to stay after all. Mom asked him about it once. He had said he didn't want to uproot Cove's life a second time. Mr. Holden tried to get Cove to like Sunset Bird more. He kept encouraging his son to go out and see the place. Sometimes Mr. Holden volunteered you to spend time with Cove. You weren't sure how well it worked, though. Cove never talked to anyone about what happened with his parents, and withdrew whenever it was brought up. It was hard for him, yet nobody knew how to help. Eventually, Cove stopped crying on his own. You couldn't understand what had changed, but you never asked. You doubted he would tell you. After that, it felt like things had gone back to normal, except what was normal didn't stay the same. Years passed, and suddenly you were in middle school. You weren't a kid anymore. You were 13 years old, and they officially made you a teen, even if your sister didn't agree. The toys and crayons that used to litter every free space in your room had been packed away somewhere, replaced by new hobbies. There were other changes, too. Cove's cast got taken off. It was weird seeing him without it initially. Underneath the pink plaster ended up being a long, thin scar that snaked across his forearm. Cove cheeks flushed with a shy pride when someone drew attention to it. He also went through a major growth spurt. He was the tallest student in his class for 2 years in a row. Cove probably hold that spot again next time. In class, people knew him for far more than just being tall. He also stood out because of how well he did in gym and other athletic situations. Over the years, he became more quiet and reserved. You didn't usually see him talking to other people. The only other kid that came to visit the neighborhood when you were little, Shiloh, well, he was gone. He and his mom moved back south because of her work, just 1 year after Cove came to Sunset Bird. It had been really upsetting when he left. Lizzie was inconsolable for weeks, but nobody talked about Shiloh anymore. It was a long time ago. You learned from some heartbreaking things became less and sad the further away they were, even if they had never gotten any better. That was sad in its own way. Things at home were different too. You still lived in the same house and all, but it wasn't how it was before. Ma dyed her hair purple, wanting something new, and liked it so much she kept dyeing it. You remember calling her Mommy as a kid, but something like that seemed awkward nowadays. You were much too old for the word. Elizabeth felt too mature for her nickname too. She insisted on everybody calling her Elizabeth, so you did. Your mom soon gave her permission to go places other than the playground and shopping street, which she took advantage of. You rarely saw her around the old neighborhood. In fact, she hardly spent time with you the way she did before. Elizabeth instead associated more with the girls from school who were her own age. Maybe the difference between 13 and 15 was greater than the difference between 8 and 10. You started befriending new people you like yourself, like Derek Suarez. He didn't live in the neighborhood or go to the same school. What happened was his and Co's dad struck up a business partnership a few months ago. Then Derek would pop up in the area now and then. It seemed Mr. Schwartz was happy to let Derek tag along to his work if Derek had the time for it. Without a doubt, everyone and everything around you had changed, and all in big ways too. As time went by, though, it was easy to settle into this new normal. Then, before you knew it, school was over and summer vacation had come again. It was the first day of summer vacation. The sun was hot as ever, but you were inside and away from its harsh rays. To be more specific, you were snuggled up. Summer, we slept in. It was hot, but you still had the blanket up over your head to block out the sun. You didn't want it intruding on your lazy morning. Unfortunately, you hadn't prepared for an intrusion. From beneath the blanket, you heard the door creak open. You're still sleeping? Wow, get up. We're going to pretend to still be asleep. You stayed wrapped up in your blankets, not moving an inch, with your eyes closed peacefully. By the impatient tapping of your foot, you could tell she hadn't left. Come on, I know you heard me. Get up now. I will come over there. So much for a lazy morning. Mom told me to tell you Co's at the door. Mr. Holden made him bring some happy summer gift over. Mom wants you to take it from him and say thanks or whatever. So come down already. I'll be right there. Okay, fine. Really? That's great. I'm coming. I'll be there when I'm there. I was moody. Let's go with that. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and left, having done what she was instructed of her. You rolled out of bed, stretching your arms up high and yawning. Time to get ready. You sat yourself in front of the mirror in the far corner of your room. We're gonna be tall too. I just like being tall because I'm 5'2" in real life, so I'm gonna live out my fantasy a little bit. We're tall. You could relate to Cove and how it felt being unusually big. He was one of the rare fellow 13-year-olds whose height was a match for your own. You liked your height. You weren't sure how you felt about it. You were kind of self-conscious over it. Okay, we're already an anxious being. We've decided that. So, we're going to be a little self-conscious. You can't help but feel awkward with the body you had. Then you put the finishing touches on your outfit, or ruminating on the situation. Careless as they had been, Elizabeth's words piqued your curiosity. You were a little bothered by the intrusion. Your plans for this special day were quickly being bogged down. Well, at least there was some kind of present involved. You left your room, going down the stairs 2 steps at a time. What's Cove look like? What's Cove look like? I need to know. Sorry, my voice cracks a lot. You spotted Mom first, reclining on the couch. She had a magazine in her hand, which she was perusing through. Morning, Mom. She looked up at you, greeting you, a smile instantly appearing on her face.
Thanks.
Good morning, Ari. Thank you for coming down. Ma's at the door with Cove. He can't stay over today, unfortunately. Why don't you go thank him before he leaves? You nodded and made your way to the door of the house. Just as she said, Ma was there making conversation. She must have heard you because she looked over her shoulder.
Oh.
Look who finally made it. Morning, sleepyhead. Ma reached forward. You knew she was about to pat you on the head. She was taller than the average for an adult woman, so you were still little in her eyes, despite being big for your own age. Okay, I wouldn't let my mom really do anything she wanted to because she loved me. You stood patiently and indulged your ma's wishes. She gave you 2 small taps on the crown of your head. Give me 1 sec, I need water. Oh, better. You're the last one down today. You know that? Life isn't a race. Morning. I was going to stay in longer, so you're welcome. Sorry about the wait. What'd we get? I was going to stay longer. Yeah, thank you for gracing us all with your presence this fine day. With a small laugh, Ma stepped aside. Cove was just as you remembered, exactly how you came to know him to be. Oh my god. This man. This is the third time I have seen him, and he looks different. He leaned uncomfortably to the side in your doorway as the long strands of his hair idly drifted with the breeze. His features were pinched in embarrassment as he shifted from one foot to the other. He was holding what must be the much talked about gift. At first glance, you figured it must be a bouquet of flowers. Then you gave it a real look. No, instead, it was carefully cut fruit. It made a lot of sense. It was actually from Ko's dad. You had to suppress a laugh at the showing. You couldn't imagine many folks buying this sort of thing for their own personal enjoyment. What kind of arrangement was That kind of arrangement was built for the presentation, likely to impress whoever was inevitably going to receive it. It seemed no matter how long he lived here, Mr. Holden would keep going out of his way to be neighborly, and Cove would always be roped into participating. Cove audibly sighed. There was no way to tell if he was just relieved that he could leave soon, or he wasn't happy to see you. Either way was equally possible. The two of you had never clicked like your families wanted, not even close. Hey, nice to see you again. Yeah. And that was all he said. You supposed it could be considered comforting that some things don't ever change. It was already shaping up to be another long summer with Cove undesired presence filling the days. His awkwardness over the task started to creep back in, so Cove nudged the gift close to you. He was ready to be relieved of it. With that, the gift was accepted. Well, that's everything. He turned away from your gaze. It seemed like he'd rather be anywhere but here. Thank you. Thanks to your dad for buying it, and to you for bringing it over. It looks yummy. I'll let him know you said that. Why are people texting me? It is 2 a.m. Mr. Holden's behavior was really different from any neighbors you had ever had, though after 5 years, you were used to his antics, and you'd since made up your mind on what your opinion was. He was nice. He was sort of funny. He was pretty weird. You didn't like him. He was great. He was great and kind of handsome to boot. You know what? We're going to go with that. Though there were some things people didn't like about Mr. Holden, you didn't mind them and liked him quite a bit. And even if he was Colden's dad, you couldn't pretend that he wasn't a nice-looking guy. That was good too, but it was something you kept to yourself. Your thoughts were quickly interrupted by a shout. There you are! You shared a confused look as Cove as you both stepped through the open door of the neighboring street. It didn't take long to locate the source of the noise. You spotted Derek just a few yards down the road. He ran up to you. You were happy at the sight of him. You were accused of the sight. You were displeased at the sight of him. If we're not going to be friends with Cove, we have to be friends with Derek. Derek was certainly a welcome guest in your neighborhood. It was a pleasant surprise whenever he showed up. After stopping a couple of steps away, Derek hunched over to catch his breath. Then he looked up with a wild grin. Hey, guy and pal. I was just at your house, Cove, but no one was there. I'm glad you didn't go too far. Derek turned to you. He was going to say more when his eyes widened and he gasped. What's that? You followed his gaze, unsure when you realized what he meant. You were still holding Mr. Holden's gift. This kind of like a bouquet of flowers, but made of fruit. Nice. Can I have some? Sure, we can share. I haven't even tried any yet. It's a gift from my family. I can't give it to you. Maybe you can have some later. It was a gift for the family. We can't just go giving it away, guys. Derek pouted at your words, not hiding his disappointment. Aw, okay. Then he nodded his head as if to clear it. Anyway, that's right. I came here because I needed to say something big. He paused, possibly for effect. There's some kid here in Sunset Bird. Cove was as surprised as you were by the news. Such a reaction made sense. No one around your age had moved here since Cove did 5 years ago. Were they with their family? Maybe they were cutting through. Nuh-uh, the new kid's all by himself, just walking. Did you talk to him? Nope, I came to report the sighting right away. The kid had green hair, glasses, pretty small, and seemed really upset about something. I hope he didn't leave. You blinked slowly. You looked over to your longtime neighbor. That sounds a lot like you, Cove, when you first got here anyway. Oh yeah, I guess that was me back then. Derek snickered good-naturedly. I can see that really well now that you say so. But what'd you say? Let's go find Cove's look-alike. We should all meet him. I'll do it. Sure. I want to see who this person is. Derek grinned, then pointed down the street the way he came. Last I saw, the mysterious visitor was going this direction. Nothing else needed to be said. The three of you were off, with Derek leading the way. Derek brought you to the beach as a trio. You made your way down the shore to the old playground. You walked a familiar path in a comfortable silence. When you were almost there, you spotted the kid in question. His big bright colors almost shone like a beacon beneath the rays of the sun. He scuffled around, kicking up sand as he paced. It was true, he certainly seemed upset, but you didn't think he was sad like you had originally pictured. Not with this erratic movement and scrunched up expression. He came off as angry. You were curious about him, and what was so mad about? Derek must have felt the same as you. He waved wildly, calling out to the boy. Hey, guy, over here. The kid whipped around in an impressed scowl carving deep into his face. His eyes were tired but strong. Hostile energy still radiated from him. What? What is it? What do you want? The sharp tone made Derek flinch, and he stiffened on his feet. Oh, what's your name? Jeremy. What? Was that it?
No.
No, I'm Derek. This is Ari and Cove. We're just walking around and saw you. We wanted to say hi. There aren't a lot of kids around our age in the neighborhood. Yeah, so, it's cool to see someone else here. Strangely, Jeremy grew furious by your response. If steam could erupt from a person's ears, it would have happened then. They did bring me somewhere stupid. Of course, I knew it. What? My parents. They're the ones who brought me. I didn't walk to this town. Can you not figure that out on your own? Right. My dad brings me to Sunset Bird too when he has to come for work and all that stuff. It's not bad. That earned him a glare from Jeremy. Derek winced beneath it, glancing away. It was a struggle to remain friendly with this Jeremy guy. I mean, I wouldn't come back here for a real vacation probably either. That's an understatement. This doesn't count as a vacation. It's a waste of time, a chore. My parents' family is nearby, and we just had to come see them. Ugh. They're your parents' family. Doesn't that make them your family too? I guess. That's a pretty good reason to come by. Didn't you want to go somewhere else? No. Jeremy crossed his arms with a huff. He turned away. They should have gone by themselves since they care so much. Left me at home. But I'm not allowed to be by myself. Pfft. That makes no sense. They're the ones who don't know how to do anything, and I'm the kid? He kept quiet. You shouldn't talk about your parents like that. Sorry, it must be suck being forced to do something you don't want to. We just said hello. You don't have to keep complaining at us. Calm down. You don't have to yell so much. Who peed in your cereal this morning? Okay, but I love this. That's what my family used to say. Jeremy's lips curled and his face contorted from anger to horror.
That's disgusting.
Why would you think something like that? It's disgusting. It's just an expression. He took a deep breath. You thought for one hopeful second that maybe he was calming himself down. He was not. So what? You're putting it in people's heads? I don't want to have to think about it, and someone brainless might decide it's a good idea and actually do it. There's some real stupids out in the world, You're all living proof of that. Hey! We're not stupid. Smarter than you are. Shut up. Stop it. We're going with this one. How are you going to prove that when you're just saying one moronic thing after another? You turned to Cove, lowering your voice. The two of you aren't that similar after all. Jeremy must have had good hearing, though, because he caught the private exchange and soft. Of course we're not similar. My eyebrows aren't stupid. Cove's cheeks flushed crimson at the insult. You couldn't be sure if it was out of embarrassment or anger, or maybe both. Come on. What? No, Cove's wavy eyebrows are cool. How can you say that when you've got a bowl cut? Don't listen to him. They're really unique and special. Well, they are kind of silly. Apologize to Cove right now. You can't treat people like that. We're gonna diss his hair. If he's gonna diss his eyebrows, we're gonna diss his hair. Yep, it's embarrassing and awful, but my parents made me do it. I won't have to have it when I'm older. I don't know what he's gonna do with those things, except maybe shave them off. He probably should. I bet he'd look less dumb with no eyebrows. You just rolled your eyes, you crossed your arms over your chest, you shook your head, you patted Cove on the shoulder, you lunged towards Jeremy. We're gonna... I want to fight him. But... We're just gonna smirk. He wasn't the nicest kid you ever met, but certainly wasn't the dullest. He rejected your amusement by grimacing harder than ever. Wow, what's wrong with you? Instead of taking offense, Jeremy only parroted Derek's words in a nasally voice. Wow, what's wrong with you? Wow, wow. This is dumb. Jeremy stuck out his tongue and sulked away, throwing more sand everywhere as he went. You watched him go, hunched over, until until he became a speck in your vision. Silence reigned in his wake as the three of you tried to process what just happened. I can't believe it. What a mean kid. Derek wasn't kidding, and by the sounds of those earlier complaints, this new boy Jeremy was going to be in the area at least a little while this summer. Derek sighed in dismay, plopping on the ground. You followed, and Cove did too shortly after. There wasn't much else to do. This sucks. I was hoping we could meet someone fun, hang out maybe. He shook his head after a moment, slowly turning to you with hope and expression. But you know what? But you know what would really improve my day? What? He didn't respond. Instead, he used his hand to point right at the fruit arrangement that you were still holding. You'd completely forgotten about it during the mini-drama that unfolded. You had gotten used to the wait. Glancing over to Cove, you noticed he was eyeing the fruit. He must want some too. I need to save it. Why not? Let's eat. I'm going to say this again. Spot for our family. Okay. He sagged and staring at the glistening fruit, but still didn't insist further. You could always get one for yourself. No, thank you. Quiet once more descended upon the group. Cove turned toward the ocean, contemplative expression on his face. You two remember the land before time? The fruit. That fruit makes me think of it. The dinosaurs all like the leaves, and that were shaped like stars. Whew! Tree stars. Yeah, chomping leaves looked so delicious when they did it. I love that movie. I've never seen it. I like that one. That movie's for kids. Eating leaves looks good. Should I worry about you? Do you think things taste better when they're shaped like stars? I feel like we should tease him a little. He snickered. No, I'm not about to do it for real. I did pretend I was a long neck when I ate broccoli one time. Derek didn't say anything further about dinosaurs or otherwise. For the next few minutes, the three of you watched the waves crash onto the shore. Cove stood up and unannounced, dusting off the sand and closed one hand. You saw a flash scar on the inside of his arm as he did. I'm gonna go. Okay, bye, dude. Later, Cove. You watched as he walked off towards some other place that wasn't here, his gait unhurried. You weren't annoyed or upset by his sudden exit. It was how Cove was, only sticking around as long as he saw fit. Derek let out a deep breath and leaned back on his arms. His head rolled until his gaze met yours. So, are you ready for summer break? Yeah? No? I'm not sure. Are you? How's someone supposed to be ready for a break? I'm gonna ask if he is. Well, it feels like there's a lot to plan for. Before you could say anything else, a light atmosphere was shattered. Hey, Aerie! You glanced over your shoulder to see your sister as she strode closer and closer, appearing none too pleased. I've been looking all over for you. Ma said you and Cove ran off with the thing Mr. Holden bought for us. She leered over with arms folded. So, where is it? It's fine, and right here. You turned your body to face and held up the bouquet, proving that it was in one piece. She inspected the fruit arrangement with a small frown. All right, looks good, but if you're done, if all you're doing is sitting around, you better take it back to the house now. It's not just for you. Get going. This wasn't okay just because you hadn't done anything yet. This wasn't okay just because you hadn't done anything yet. All right, yeah, I was right. Oh no, I think I hear the mean kid coming back. We better get out of here. Elizabeth blinked confused and looked around. What kid? I don't see anyone. Derek didn't bother explaining. He just launched his feet and ran off. He turned to watch Elizabeth. He stared back, bowed raised. I'll stay. She is our sister. You didn't make a break for it. Instead, you carefully got out from the sand, bouquet still in hand. As he straightened up, Elizabeth smiled affectionately over at you. Come on, fugitive. You nodded, then examined the fruit skewers. You wanted to make sure it hadn't been jostled by the short adventure you'd gone on. You still looked great, and Elizabeth noticed too. You know, we could split it now and tell Mom the boys ate it. They bailed, so they don't get to tell the story. Moms would never need to find out. So much for it's not just yours, very hypocritical. She bumped your shoulder, winking cheekily. What else is family for? You laughed together, making your way back home side by side. Elizabeth didn't follow through with the joke to eat everything before getting home. When the two of you returned, your moms welcomed you back. There wasn't a mention of the mini event that had unfolded. The four of you happily split the K in the end. It was a while ago now. Later that night, you found yourself seated near the kitchen counter. Your fingers drummed on the surface. You waited. Your gaze trained on the phone. You were waiting on a call tonight, specifically from your cousin Leandra, who you didn't want to miss. Alexandria. You didn't want to miss it accidentally. Your uncle, aunt, and Lee used to live many hours away. Your families only saw each other a few times a year for big occasions. A while back, though, they'd moved and were closer to you than ever before. You now hung out regularly. With school being out, you're positive she was going to come over a lot. The two of you were the same age and got along well. She used to be really fond of Elizabeth, too, but now that your sister had become allergic to interacting with her own family, it tended to just be you and Lee who spent time together. She was your only friend who was a girl. Being family helped make you close, but you had a lot of girlfriends. I'm gonna say yeah. Even though you weren't a girl, you befriended them pretty well. You had a lot of non-girlfriends. You didn't have many non-girlfriends. Well, we already have Derek. I would say that's a step in the right direction. We had a lot of non-girlfriends. What kind of gender someone was didn't seem to make any difference in who you got along with. Then the shrill ringtone announced an incoming call, and you jumped before grabbing the receiver and pressing it to your ear. Lee, finally! Hi, sorry about the wait, Ari. It took forever to get the phone away from my mom. That's okay. There was static on the end, as if Lee was shifting wherever she was. So, can you believe school is actually over? I thought it'd never be done. Now we don't have to do any of that boring stuff. We get to hang out whenever we want. Speaking of hanging out, Lee, can you wait a second? Let me head up to my room. Oh, yeah. You got up from your seat at the counter. Luckily, the phone was wireless. You didn't have to worry about any cord tying you down. Your mom's had a rule about not moving the phone unless a call was in progress, which was why you'd been sat by its cradle waiting for Lee to call. Your mom's could be really unfair. You thought that made sense. You didn't like it, but it had to be that way. It makes sense. That's how it was in my family, too. I'm not about to judge. It was nice to keep everything in its proper place. But now that Lee had called, it was okay for you to go upstairs to your bedroom and talk to her. You jogged up the stairs, taking two at a time and smiling. After you had arrived, you shut the bedroom door firmly behind you. You took a seat on your bed. All right, I'm here. Cool. Hey, did you know the girl down the street from me has her own phone now? A cell phone. She doesn't have to wait for someone else to stop using it or anything. Wow, really? The thought of someone having a phone that was all their own seemed unbelievable to you. Right? I wish I had one too, but my parents said I couldn't get my own phone until I'm more grown up. I wish they had changed their minds. We could all call each other every single day, and no one would be able to stop us. How great would that be? Really great. But wouldn't I still be using my home phone? It's too bad that's so far away. Logically, wouldn't we still be using the home phone? My moms would be able to stop us if they wanted to. You laughed. You didn't put a damper on her imagination. Oh, then you'd have your own phone too. That works. She sighed dramatically. I bet I'm not gonna get one until I'm all the way in college. Squeezing the phone between your shoulder and ear, you puffed up your pillow to make yourself more comfy. It was a strange thing to think of a time when normal school would be over and you'd have to choose whether or not to go to college. School was such a big part of your life right now. Studying didn't come easily to you, though you tried hard. You worked about as hard as most people and got pretty average results as well. You tried very much, but you still didn't do that bad. You didn't bother at all in school, and your grades reflected that. Everything in your classes came easily. You worked hard for your excellent grades. I tried really hard, and I still didn't do very good. Worked hard. Most people. You didn't bother at all in school. Your grades. Everything class. We're gonna go with you worked hard for your excellent grades. Every A plus you brought home was a result of concentration and diligence. You hoped that you would be able to keep it up through high school. You felt a lot of pressure to maintain the high grades you had last year. You hope to do just as well this year, but it would be a big deal if they dropped some. You were confident your grades would remain great. You had no plans on getting excellent scores this time around. Let's just be confident they remain the same, okay? You could definitely keep the streak going. Yeah. You tried to sound engaged, but your mind had decided to go back to school despite the season. Lee knew you too well to be fooled. You sound so spacey. What's up? Just thinking about school. Lee groaned. Are you thinking about how we don't have to think about it? Because it's summer. That's what I'm doing. I'm looking forward to going back. Let's make a petition for more vacation time. It's so awful I hate going. Come on. It's too scary not to think about. I was that person. Too scary not to think about. No matter how much you wanted to enjoy your free time, the creeping dread of knowing that it would come to an end was always there beside you. I get what you mean, though I guess school isn't all the way bad. You can do some good things there. You can't just do more when school's out. Learning new things can be cool. I like gym. I always took a PE class every year. There's all sorts of sports stuff during gym. Oh yeah, it can be fun sometimes. Cafeteria lunch at my school could be better. Could be better than they had any right to be. The easiest way to hang out with people who aren't in the neighborhood. Learning new things can be cool. I liked hanging out with people. If I didn't go to school, I'd never meet anybody new. No one really comes here. Uh-huh. And I guess that's all. That's pretty much everything that's good about school. Okay, point taken. Now I decree the topic of school is officially closed. We have to talk about this summer. First, before we start plotting the rest of our lives, I got some plans already. Like, I'm gonna visit my cousins. You chuckled, of course. What's something you want to do? First thing that comes to your head. I want to spend some time with people. I've got new art supplies, reading. I'm gonna catch up on TV and movies. I probably spend time at the beach. I don't want to do anything at all this vacation. I liked reading. Let me know if you're reading anything good, unless it's scary or sad. Sure. You lean back in your bed, sitting and as you continue chatting to your friend, even though it hadn't been that long since you saw her, you'd be seeing her soon. You found plenty to talk about. For one, the events of the day, you sat up straighter. I was with Cove and Derek today, and we met a new kid. Like at your neighborhood? Mm-hmm. His parents are visiting family, so it sounds like he'll be around for a little while. I don't know how long. What was he like? Creepy, mean, weird, kind of interesting. I'm gonna say mean. Because he was. He kept snapping when we all were trying to do was talk to him. He just kept being rude to everybody. But especially Cove. I don't think I want to meet him. You want a boy to stay away before even meeting him? That's an unexpected twist. Bullying her. Her cousin was pretty popular with the boys who knew her. She seemed pretty happy enough having them around until they started to annoy her. Who are you talking? Who are you to talk? Cove and Derek are always around. They're boys, you know. That's true. That's not the same. They're not always around. I'm the one who invites them. They show up on their own. You weren't able to say anything. That's not the same. Lee laughed at your rejection of the idea, deeply amused. After a moment, you chuckled along with her. There was a stomping noise approaching your room, herald at the arrival of your irritated older sister. She flung the door open, frown etched on her face. The adventure from earlier hadn't gotten you any good with this time, it seemed. How long are you going to hog the phone? Glancing at your watch, you realize your quick call had gone on much longer than anticipated. Elizabeth held out her hand, and the other one lodged on her hip. She noticed the realization on her face. Time's up. Gotta go. I'll see you soon. With a sigh, you said your goodbyes to Lee. Sorry for being so long. I'm still using it. Now get out of my room. I was the person who'd be like, sorry, gotta go. Or I'm like, I'm sorry. Lee, I have to go now. Okay, see you soon. Tell Elizabeth and your moms I said hi too. You'd barely press the end call button while Elizabeth whisked the handset away from your finger, beginning to dial someone new. She strode out of the room. Your mom's voice called from downstairs. Hey, has anyone seen the phone? I'm using it! With that, she shut your door behind you. Silence was left in the wake. That was one way to end your first day of summer break. Breakfast was eaten in peace and alone. Your moms were both out by the time you had gotten up. They had left you a serving from food from the breakfast they made. hash browns, an omelet, fruit salad, and there were a few sausage links. Took a bit of everything. You passed on some parts because they weren't to your liking. Passed on some parts because you were trying to avoid meat. Passed on some parts because you were trying to avoid animal products. I would have skipped out on the sausage just because I always found it too salty. That's the kind of person I was. You appreciated that there was a variety in your meal your mom made. The parts you did have were tasty. The day lazily drifted by at home, and eventually your parents returned. You pulled open the fridge again, lingering in the frosty air for a moment or two before grabbing a bottle of ice-cold water and taking a long drink. It was perfect balmy summer afternoon, and you had decided to head outdoors to find something to do. You hadn't decided what something was just yet, but you were sure something would pop up to occupy your time. You stepped out the front door onto the street, deciding which way to go first, when a voice caught your attention. Hi, Ari! Confused, you looked over to see an unrecognizable woman who was waving at you, a friendly smile plastered on her face. You racked your memory for where you might have seen her before, but nothing came to mind. Not your school, or from the country club your moms took you to. You had absolutely no idea who this woman was. The woman crossed the road towards you, and you were a little unsure whether to stay put or go back into the house and lock the door. Oops, I'm sorry. Was that presumptuous? I've heard about you, but you have no idea who I am, do you? You shake your head, and she removes sunglasses to reveal sparkly ocean blue eyes. All of a sudden, she seemed a little bit more familiar. My son lives here, and my ex, too. With a bent smile, she lifted a hand to point at the condo across the street from your own house. She was Cove's mom. You didn't know why you hadn't realized it sooner. Now you'd gotten a good look at her. She seemed nice. She seemed sort of strange. She looked really young. And since she was Cove's mom, she felt different to Cove. She was super pretty. But she is! We're gonna go with she was pretty. This beautiful lady was Cove's mother? Wow. It's kind of crazy how both his parents were that good looking. She extended a hand again, this time for you to take. You studied the manicured fingers in front of your face at the assortment of bracelets dangling from her wrist. I'm Kira Parisi. You can call me Kira. We shake her hand. We gotta be nice. You reached out and took her hand, and she took yours firmly, grinning wide. I'm Ari, but you already know that. That I do. Cove's mentioned you to me before. It's nice to officially meet you, Ari. He did? Cove and I aren't really friends. I've also heard that. Maybe that will change one day. What has Cove said about me? What are you doing here? Nice to meet you, too. You kept quiet. I'm gonna ask what Cove said about it. Oh, I can't tell you that. I've already said too much. She laughed good-naturedly. You couldn't be happy about that answer, though. The sound of a door opening and closing caught both your attention, and when you turned towards the sound of it to find Cove exiting his house, his eyes skimming the ground. Considering just how tall he had grown, you kind of figured his mom also would have been tall, but she was much more on the short side for an adult anyway. Cove's height must come from his father. There you are. I thought you were going to keep me standing out here all day. You said nothing as Cove walked over to the two of you. When he finally looked up, he noticed you were there and raised an eyebrow curiously. You couldn't quite tell if his expression that crossed his face was confusion or relief. Cove and I are heading out into town to grab something to eat while the snore is at work. Harry beamed at Cove and ruffled his hair, which only seemed to upset him more. You assumed the snore she was talking about was Mr. Holden. Hey, you should come with us, Ari. I'd love to get to know you better. Yeah, you should come. Cove inviting us somewhere, even though we're not friends? Love that. You were a little taken aback by Cove's agreement. You hadn't imagined being stuck with him and his suddenly appearing mom for the afternoon, especially not if he was going to be gloomy the whole time. Of course, you'll run it by your parents first, responsibility and all of that. It'll give me an excuse to meet them, which I need to do at some point. It's important to be neighborly if I'm going to be roosting on this street for the time being. Anywhoosie, let's go. Kara walked ahead towards your house, and you hung back with Cove, who crinkled his nose as he watched her. I'm sorry about her. I really do want you to come. I don't want it to be just the two of us. Not right now. I didn't know your mom was coming over. Don't you usually go to where she is? Yeah, she's going to be staying with us for the summer. She just got here this morning. It was a surprise they planned. His face scrunched up more. You nodded in understanding. Cove had been through this a whole lot with both his parents in the past few years. It seemed like it was still taking some time to adjust. The two of you headed over to where Cove's mom had knocked on your front door and stood behind her. Mom answered the door after a minute, her eyebrows lifting in surprise at the group she found at her front door. You realized that, like you, she would have no idea that this woman was Ko's mom, who was hanging out with you. However, after blinking at the woman a couple of times, looking between her and Cove, the realization seemed to strike her. Hello there, I'm Pamela. I see you met my kid Ari, and I'm guessing you already know who Cove. Oh, already known Cove for a while. Kira laughed, and you and Cove exchanged a look at your parents' weird sense of humor. I'm Kyra Priest, Cove's mom. It's so nice to meet you. I had a purple brown haircut. Can I not hit the button, please? Your eyes. Your mom popped up behind. Mom squeezing herself and beside her. A head of purple. Come on. We have company. I was wondering what all the commotion was. She grinned excitedly at Kira. The two of them introduced themselves and shook hands. Hi, Ari. Cove. Cove smiled at Ma shyly and gestured a hand towards the living room. There's no use hanging around in the doorway. Why don't you come in? I'd love to, but I promised to take my son out to eat, and I wouldn't want to hold you up with a surprise visit. Cove grimaced and held back a groan. He likely took offense at how she didn't want to put them out with a surprise visit, but not him apparently. I understand. You're welcome to stop by any time. I'll take you up on that offer when I can. Count on it. Would you mind it too much if Ari went with Cove and I? My treat. We won't be driving. Just a quick walk down the road. Sure, that sounds nice. I hope you all have fun. You gave your moms a look as they smiled at you fondly. You were happy they were letting you go. You were annoyed they agreed just like that. Okay, we don't like Cove. We tolerate him. That's what the vibe is. So we're annoyed. Even if you had shown up with them, you and Cove didn't hang out often. At least they could have done was checked with you first. Letting out a sigh, you resigned yourself to the fact you didn't have much of a choice. Marvelous. Expect us back in an hour or two. We look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Your parents waved goodbye, then the three of you backed up onto the street. There was the sound of the front door closing behind you. I'm pretty positive I saw some restaurants when I was in the taxi not too far from here. Yeah. It's a tourist town, isn't it? There's a lot of them around. Kira put a hand on her hip and smiled at her son. Well, you sound like the area expert. Do you have any recommendations for a place nearby? Not really. Kira pouted at him a little and turned to you instead. How about you, Ari? You want to point me in the right direction? You shrugged. Not really. Sure, I have a couple favorites. You nodded. Okay, let's just shrug, see how that goes. You had been to a lot of places in town, but none of them really stood out. Well, let's head into town and see what we can find. Will you show us the way? You nodded, taking the lead of your little group as Cove and his mom followed behind you. There, the three of you left the neighborhood behind. You walked around for a little while, looking at the different options and gazing into various shop windows. Most of the restaurants you passed were filled with guests already, sampling the town's various food places. When you headed past a familiar place with gold writing on the glass and red lacquer roof you had always admired, you started to slow down. My family comes here all the time. It's really good. I think we have a winner. I've always loved Chinese food. Let's head on in. The restaurant was busy, as usual, but luckily you were shown right to a small table. Kira lowered herself into the chair while Cove picked up one diagonal to her, not facing her, or to the side. It was awkward. Ahem. Let's see. Start. What would you like to drink? I'll get an orange soda. Noted. Ari? Water, soda, milk, juice, coffee. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink a ton of soda. Milk does not sound good for a restaurant. Juice. Juice is good. Which flavor? Orange, apple, or lemonade? I love me my lemonade. Sure. Kira placed the order for your drinks, getting a black hot coffee for herself, and it didn't take long before they were brought to the table and set in front of you. You took a long sip of your drink as you looked around the restaurant. Your small group checked over the menus, and you decided to order a usual thing. You'd been to this restaurant many times. You knew what was good and what wasn't already. Kira and Cove didn't need any encouragement for this. They were totally focused on the information in front of them. Soon the meals, too, were ordered and the menus taken away. You glanced at the table surface, wanting to figure out what to say. Cove awkwardly sunk back further into his seat and crossed his arms, all while blatantly avoiding eye contact. The sidewall must be real interesting to him right now. His sour feelings